David Edward and Matt Gatz discuss Matt's book, The New Assassin's Field Guide and Almanac.
Matt, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to us here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course. Now, Matt, I understand not only are you an ex rugby star, but you've also written a book.
Yes, I was a rugby star a long time ago when I had hair and muscles. But the book that I wrote is a book called The New Assassin's Field Guide and Almanac.
Nice. There it is.
It is a thriller that I wrote and just recently I had published. So
wonderful. Now, did you go through a publisher?
I went through Dorrance Publishing. I self-published with them. I mean, they have a little bit of an audition aspect to things, but so it wasn't as bad as paying a full fee for a company where they do the entire thing. But
right.
Anyway, so it worked out really well. They were very good with things. The pandemic slowed some things down a little bit, but
sure.
Really happy with the final product.
Okay. And so what was it? You know, you were sitting around basking in your past rugby glory, teaching children how to be better citizens, and you said, you know what? On top of all this, I'm going to write a book. What was it that inspired you to take on the challenge of writing a book?
I've always liked being a writer. I've written short stories before and gotten published a couple times with those, enough to maybe make enough money to buy maybe one pizza, but Seacoast Writers Association contest, stuff like that. And I had a good time. I liked it, but anyway, I was talking with my stepdaughter, and she was asking me, where do you think they send the kids who are special ed kids instead of sending them to Hogwarts? And I just started thinking about special ed witches, and that transferred over to a school for assassins. Now,
obviously, I get it.
Well, I started thinking they already have a special ed for witches because I have Slytherin House, so I had to skip that. But anyway, so I just got this idea about an assassin. At the time, there wasn't a lot of material out like that. Now there's a ton. Believe me, every time I saw John Wick or something come out, I got like, oh no, but.
Right.
But another friend of mine who's a writer said, you know, there's not just one cowboy book. So
no, there's probably 6 or 7 of them, right?
Exactly.
So how do you come up with a title for this thing?
Well, I had another idea a long time ago involving people trying to pull off a heist at an art gallery and using the weather as a cover. And I started just fiddling around with how accurate an almanac is, and found out that it's nowhere near accurate enough to do that. But somehow the idea of an instruction manual for assassins, that there would be something like that for someone who was starting out, and it just went from there. And I thought it was a kind of a clunky title, and then I thought I started to really like it and kept it. So
okay, yeah. So what did your writing process look like? How long did it take you to write this?
It took me about a year and a half to write it. My writing process, I had kind of a transition in that. I used to write at night, into the night.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I write more during the day. But the bulk of this was written at a time when I was between jobs, and I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. Pardon me. And I wrote probably about half of the first draft in the Arlington Public Library because I spent a couple months there and just had the time to do it. And I had the luxury to have an entire day to write, or the drive to do it at that length anymore. But that's how the bulk of the skeleton of it was written.
Yeah.
And then I rewrote it here in Maine when I had moved back and resumed a teaching career and so on. So
interesting.
About 2 years, I'd say.
I've been there. Now, obviously, that's a beautiful library. So that is inspirational almost to sit in there and be able to write. It
was. I would love to go back to it now, because at the time I felt so lonely and just like, no one's ever going to read this, and I don't know if I'm going to get home. So now I feel very nostalgic about it.
That's good. Now, did you outline it, or how do you structure writing?
I do an outline. I do believe in doing outlines. I'm not really rigid about it, but I do an outline, and I usually stick to it for a while, and then the situation occurs where other things happen. The characters kind of take off on their own, which is always a pleasure when that happens. But I usually have outlines, and I stick with them maybe 60%, and then once things get rolling, stuff changes.
At some point you let it go, right?
Yeah, no, and new inspirations come along.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a set piece in the book where a person has to, where one of my main characters has to climb through a series of pipes. And I wanted to have the sewer pipe scene just because I liked it. And at the time, his daughter calls on the phone while he's down there. And it's kind of a funny part and kind of an intense scene. But while I was living in Washington, I was at the Lincoln Memorial, and they had drained the reflecting pool. And it was all
wow.
pipes and trenches. So I have it take place there. And
Cool.
I actually had a chance to climb into the area and look around and see stuff. So they've filled it again long since, but
Sure.
so that's a way that things can change sometimes.
That's pretty cool.
That wasn't-
Now, did you like try and hit a certain word count each day too, or how did that? How do you know you when you were done writing that? Each day.
I try to make sure that I do at least 2 pages a day if I'm having a terrible time of it. If I don't, up to 5 pages.
Okay.
But it depends. So on a bad day, if I'm really struggling, I try to get at least 500 words down. And,
Okay.
I have the word count wrong. Sorry about that. But 2 pages that would come out 2 typed, I guess. And on good days, I can go up to 8. It kind of varies. It depends.
Yeah, that's about. I actually that's interesting. I do the same thing if I'm having a bad day. I write on a word count. I have no idea how many. I know it's like between 250 and 400 words a page. Who knows?
Now,
But
do you write at the keyboard? Do you compose at the keyboard?
oh yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Because I do more and more, but I still have a thing about first drafts or the first part of a story longhand on a legal pad.
Really?
It's just a habit. Yeah, I still like it.
Yeah, I couldn't. I can't. I just can't. I don't know why. I can't think like that. I don't know. It has to be on like because I move stuff around and everything.
Yeah. Well, I technologically came to my computer savvy skills are there. I've obviously been able to work in the education system and I know how to use a computer, but when it comes to writing, I like to do it with a pen first. I'm just old fashioned, I guess.
Wow.
I have to kind of think about pen and pads, and I have way too many of both, but I'm learning more computer stuff as I go. So.
Yeah, for me, it's just easier. But yeah, but I'm the same way too, which is if I'm having a bad day, I force myself to do 500 words. And I've had 6,000 word days. I don't know how many pages that is, but yeah, I mean, it's just flowing and just letting it happen. But
the magic takes place. And Neil Gaiman said a very nice thing that I got a kick out of. He said that when you go back and reread it, you won't remember which days it was flowing and which days you were putting words in like a brick on a wall, and so on.
Yeah.
You won't remember once you see it. So, and as far as writer's block goes, I don't want to insult anybody in any way, but I kind of tend to just not believe in that. I believe you have good and bad days.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't had a blank day. So
I have not had a blank day either. And I've had very bad days, but it's
I
not.
think there are people who do. I'm not saying that. Well, I don't mean that at all. I'm just saying that's the way it is.
Well, so you mentioned part of the book, the pipes, and all of that. Did you do a lot of other research for this book, and how much of it is based in kind of the real world, and how much of it is just the imagination side?
I would say probably. It's kind of half and half.
Okay.
I did do a lot of research for the weapons in the book, and I'm sure there are people who could probably correct things that I have in there.
Sure.
I used to hunt a long time ago when I was in college, but that was pheasant, and that's not the same thing as the weapons I have in this book. So I did a lot of research with different magazines, online sites, talking to people that I know who are more conversant with weapons. So that was a lot. And I would say the only other thing was I found that going to places to be inspired, like I have a scene that takes place in an abandoned motel, and I actually found one and kind of walked around, took some pictures. So I enjoy that process. It inspires me.
It's the same way.
I don't do everything, but
yeah, and I'm the same way. I try and remember something I've seen, and if I just can't remember anything, I try and go find something that I can remember having seen.
Exactly.
Even just a picture online, so that I can put in my memory. Yeah. So
absolutely. And when people, I remember back when I was much younger, and I heard a teacher say, "Write what you know." And you interpret it literally, and you're like, well, I don't know what it's like to be on Mars or whatever. but then I realized that's not it. Well, you're writing what you know. I know what it's like to work in a whole variety of really intense schools. I've worked at a mental hospital a couple of times as a consultant and as a counselor. So I took all of that and spun it into my Thanatos Guild school. I know what a special school can be like. So I just,
Wow.
those parts were real life. But
Wow. Yeah. So the book is out, right?
the book is out. It's available for order. It's also at Barnes and Noble. It's at a couple local places here in Maine, and Books A Million, I think, has it too.
It's on
And,
Amazon.
and it's on Amazon. Yep.
Yeah. I peeked that on Amazon. It's getting pretty good reviews, it looks like.
Yes, it's getting very good reviews. I had a couple really nice ones that they didn't put up because the people didn't purchase it on Amazon. I didn't realize that was part of their thing. So
Right.
I'm going to find some way to shoehorn it in another way. But I'm happy with people's reactions. And I've also heard from a couple old high school, not enemies, but just people I never thought I would talk to again. And they're sending me pictures that they bought the book, and I got a big bang out of that. That was very sweet.
Is there anything else that has surprised you about the reception of the book?
I was very surprised at how many of my old students who are now adults now have all gone out to buy it. I was really surprised at the modern thing of you buy the book and you take a picture of yourself holding it or just holding it. And I have like 30 of those, and it's a thing. And I'm trying to find a way to put them online because I know it's a modern, again, it's a thing that people do with the computer and with their phones. And I'm maybe a little bit behind the curve. So that was a surprise. I was like, everybody's doing a portrait photo with the book cover. So that
wow. And it's been out for 3 or 4 months, right? Is that right?
Yep. About 3 months.
When someone reads this book, what is it that they come away with?
I would like to think that they're coming away with a story where I was toying with or examining the idea, can you choose to be a good person? If you're doing something bad, or if you're a bad person, or you're doing an evil act as your job, can you stop and decide that you're going to clean the slate and be a better person? And that's what the first book is an examination of, in part, because he likes being an assassin. He enjoys the situation. He has some issues, definitely.
Sure.
He's haunted by the ghost of his father, and you find out he's not quite as easy with it as it seemed. But when he finds out that he has a child out of wedlock, a special needs child, that's when he decides I should quit and find a way, and maybe to see if I could be a good father. And I don't make it definitive that he even gets there, but he's trying. And that's what I enjoyed examining.
I think that's my favorite kind of book and story, stuff like that. I try and write along those things. My themes are always, how do you know what the right thing is, or what is good, what is bad?
Well,
and
a long time ago, have you ever read Robert Parker's Spencer novels?
I've read some, and I love his Westerns.
Well, the Westerns have the same thing. It's men trying to decide, people trying to decide, what is the right thing to do in this situation? What can I, do that's right? And there's almost a Zen kind of thing to it. And I'm not saying it gets that heavy in my book, but at times I touched on it because it was a lot of fun to play with the idea of a man who was free to react to things that he doesn't like with shooting them, and how just across the board, and how a person would be like that when it comes to other problems.
I think that's good, and that makes these stories to me it makes the books, it makes it, what would be the right word, it gives a purpose to having read it, if that makes sense. It's more than just entertainment, because it's going to get you thinking a little bit. But you don't beat people over the head with it, right? Neither do I. But it's got to be there, else what are you really writing about, right?
You want the guy's company. One thing that I did for research, not so much research as it was going for kind of a mental flavor, I thought, how am I going to make this person likable? And at the time, the only other thing out that was sort of the same tone was when I first got the idea and wrote it as a short story, which got some nice feedback but never got published. The short story was called The Way We See Ourselves. And it was all about this character on his one job and just justifying how he is in no way a sociopath. And I meant it to be kind of funny. And it stuck with me, and I ended up writing the whole book about it. But what I researched was, I read A Clockwork Orange again, where Alec, he's an unrepentant rapist and murderer. But, 30 pages in, he's very funny. You're on his side. You can't help it. So I wanted to find a way, how will I make him have a companionable voice, even if what he does is kind of awful. And
it's hard to do. It's hard to do. In my books, I have a character like that. I didn't even intend it. It's a female character. She's like the main villain, and she has become the best character I ever wrote because of what you just said, because she's evil. She's bad. She is not a good person.
Right.
But everyone loves her and they root for her. And it's so interesting.
Well, I read about this stuff a long time ago when I was, studying English in college, of the Nietzschean Superman. And the idea that like Hannibal Lecter's like that. He's completely free.
Yeah.
He will do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He has no rules that apply to him. Now, the flip side of that is I want it to be realistic and I want it to be likable, but I also wanted to not glamorize it too much. I don't want to seem like this is, I make it clear that he really questions, am I a good person at all? Things start to change, but I do have him do it in that way that what I first marketed this as is, what if Holden Caulfield grew up to be an assassin? Mm-hmm. That's the tone of his voice and kind of his mental gymnastics as he's doing his thing.
That's fascinating. So what advice would you have? Let's wrap it up. What say someone is they're in the process of maybe writing their first book. They've written some short stories, maybe they've written a book, but they're trying to develop their writing process. What advice might you have for them?
Well, my advice is really simple. You need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. And you need to read good stuff and you need to read literature, but you also need to read stuff that's fun. You need to read things that are considered to be lowbrow, perhaps. I remember I used to read Star Trek novelizations when I was younger, and I felt like I had to hide them, like I was reading porn in the English department. Everybody else was reading, Proust and so on. But
I read all those, by the way, too, just so you know. Yeah, they're good.
There is no reason to be ashamed of writing entertainment. That's what Shakespeare did. That's what Mozart did. They did not think that they were doing something, holy and great. They were trying to entertain the people. And so I would say read a lot, write a lot.
Okay.
And it's like lifting weights. By reading, you get the idea of finding your voice. You'll imitate people and eventually shave off their parts and be more your own thing. Stuff that I wrote when I was younger definitely sounded more like Stephen King or Ray Bradbury. And now I think I have my own voice, but it's practice. And it's just a step-by-step thing. Never give up on it. And never think it's too late, because it never is.
Very cool. All right. Well, we have a link to your book below this video. Are you working on another one now?
I am working on a book right now, called Magdalena, Love and War. And that is not related to this. It's a fantasy about a woman who falls in love with one of the four horsemen and ends up interrupting Armageddon because he wants to quit the job and be with her. So it's a monster. And after that, I would like to work on a sequel to this, because I have two more for Dan Ketch. So
got it. All right. Well, look, when you get close to those other ones, let's chat again, and we'll see if your writing process has changed or if you have any new advice.
I would love that. And I'm going to start watching your podcast, and I'm also going to read your book, so I'll be more familiar with the whole landscape the next time we speak.
Well, and let me apologize in advance for the books, but they are out there. So
not at all. I think it's terrific. I admire all writers. So
all right, Matt. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Bye. Yep.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.